Hey, sports fans, Larry Eder, Run Blog Run. This is your favorite program, Socialing the Distance. Today we have Jakob Larsen. He is the Director of Competition and Events for World Athletics. And we met Jakob at the World Half back in 2014. The first time I got to spend some time in your lovely city of Copenhagen, which I loved. I would move to Denmark, like tomorrow. So good to see you, Jakob. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Pleased to join you. It's been a while for sure. So no, yeah. I'm good. Despite the, well, I guess we all have our issues right now, figuring out how to deal with the current situation. But I'm good, thank you.
Now, how is it in Denmark? Do you wear a mask outdoors? Are you able to go indoors places, or what's the protocol?
Yeah, actually, so this changes all the time. Obviously, masks has not been mandatory outdoors at any time. We've had restrictions on the number of people in public gatherings, of course. Restrictions are being lifted right now. So I guess actually starting this weekend, everything's basically back to normal. Mask is mandatory indoor, though. But that's basically it.
Are you required to have a vaccine passport when you leave Denmark to go to another country in the EU?
Well, vaccine passport or a recent test, of course. And the tricky part, even though we're part of the European Union, it differs from country to country. So, and it differs from where you're going, but also where you're coming from. So it takes some navigating right now.
We were talking about when we first met, you were ensconced in the World Half Marathon back in 2014. I thought it was a beautiful event. It was awesome. I love the way you did the media stuff. I just loved walking around Copenhagen, and it was so different. And I got a ride in one of the guys from the running club picked me up at the airport in a Tesla, and I had never been in a Tesla before. And that was so cool. It just was for America, for people in North America. It seems that in Denmark, you have really challenged people to not use the internal combustion engine. There's a lot of bikes, there's public transportation. How did you take those lessons that you're learning in Denmark, and did you help utilize them in the major event that you were doing?
Now, honestly, a lot of this was down to chance. It was coincidental in many ways. So I guess what you could say is that when we, and I was with the local organizers back then, and obviously not with World Athletics, what we did was we just threw ideas around. We had never done it before. We never done a major event like that before. And I guess you could say that ignorance is bliss, or at least it was back then, at least. Yeah. So we just threw ideas around, and whatever made sense stuck, basically. So even having the electrical car was kind of like, back then that was a novelty, and it was considered, wow, that's a cool car, Tesla. We want a cool car to lead the race. It being electrical, even better. There's a story somewhere. It's nice. We even were able to recruit drivers. Definitely not a problem with that lead car, etc. So it was not by design. It was by whatever made us smile.
That's cool. What was the biggest lesson you learned on putting on a world championship in 2014?
To summarize, I guess, realizing what can be achieved if you, as an organizer, start thinking of your event as the star, not the athletes. And I'm not trying to take anything away from the athletes, but just saying, as an organizer, the star is your event. It's not the athletes, it's the event. And I guess, which falls in line with the IOC when they published the Agenda 2020, which actually back in 2014 as well, the transformation from a competitions perspective into an event perspective, that this is not only as an organizer of championships, there's so much more to it than just, and I do not say this lightly, what takes place on the field of play. In fact, field of play will take care of field of play. We have done this for decades. We we've got that covered. It's a lot to do with everything that takes place outside the field of play. How can you maximize the experience? How can you bring relevance to that experience, to the biggest number of people, the largest crowd you can even envision? I think that was a key lesson: the power and potential of relevance.
In 2020, you put on a World Half Marathon in Poland during the pandemic. I was hoping that you're going to be able to do it with very few complications. What was the hardest part of that event for you?
Okay, so I think they had 30,000 entries. That was the same we had in Copenhagen in 2014. But there's a major difference here. Copenhagen is in many ways, it's a very big city, right? Everything's relative, but it's a big city with more than 1 million inhabitants. Gdynia, where we had the World Half Marathon Championships last year, it's a 300,000 city. Yeah. So just if you consider that, to have 30,000 people entering your race, that is, I was stunned, and to reach that as a local organizer, to actually achieve that kind of interest, only to have the mass participation part of your race canceled, it's heartbreaking. It is truly heartbreaking. That was for me personally, I really felt for the local organizers and for the sport, but that was heartbreaking.
Do you think that we are going to be able to have mass participation events that are not virtual in the next year and a half? Do you have any doubts about that, or is it going to change how we're doing things?
No, I think we will have. How we're going to do it, it's too early to tell. Obviously, a lot of organizers right now, they're experimenting with slowing down the release of runners, having the release spread across very much a longer time, etc. So all of these initiatives are being tested right now, and I think we will find a way to do this, but it's probably not going to be standard operating procedure. I think initially, for quite some time, we're going to see procedures and protocols tailor-made to the specific country, city, etc. We already have mass participation events taking place in certain areas, even a substantial number of participants, right? So I think we're going to see it. It's too soon to tell how.
In the World Half, you had to truly limit the media that were there. And, I just participated in the European Indoor, where they did remote coverage, which I thought they did a brilliant job of. Are we going to see more options with this? So the obviously the technology exists to be able to do a remote mix zone. The technology exists for me, for example, going on the European platform to watch the events and then be able to comment on them remotely. And with some of the limitations we're having right now with pandemic, do you see that as staying as part of the programming in the future with World Athletics, that you do have remote type opportunities?
Yes, for sure. And from a theoretical perspective, this is all about removing or limiting the entries, the barriers of entry, right? How can we limit or remove any barrier for people to interact with the events? So if on-site presence was necessary, we kind of need to find a way to limit, to remove that as a prerequisite. Instead, moving towards, if you want to cover this from somewhere else, wherever you are in the world, perfect. If you want to be on site, perfect as well. We'll find a way to make it work. Obviously, this is work in progress, but basically the entire thinking around our events is, well, you basically pick your way to interact with our events and we'll make sure that it's possible. That's at least the theory behind it, right?
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Have you been to Japan to survey the marathon courses and the
Yes.
walk courses?
Yes.
What are your feelings about the events in Sapporo?
Well, from a technical perspective, the course is, and now I'm talking specifically about the marathon. The marathon course is for me, it's an extremely fast course. Temperature-wise, we may not be able to see, and obviously this being a championship race as well, it's probably not going to be extremely fast-paced.
Yeah.
In comparison to what we're seeing these days. Nevertheless, it's an extremely fast course. I would say it's a world-class designed course. It's really well done, and it has flexibility for legacy purposes as well. So definitely a course with potential, not only for the games, but also legacy-wise. That's for sure.
The recent challenges in Japan with the pandemic, you're confident that we're going to be able to see these events happen?
Yes, I'm confident that it's possible. Yes, for sure. So we have just been in Sapporo and indeed in Tokyo as well for test events. And the protocols in place, health and safety protocols in place, were obviously also being tested. And it was elaborate, but also extremely well handled. So I have to say right now, the commitment to actually making this come true is just beyond belief. So there is this feeling that, yes, we can do this and we're going to do this. And we have confidence on behalf of World Athletics. This is possible. This is definitely possible. And we have no concerns about the protocol in place. We just came from World Relays where we had a substantial protocol in place, which enabled us to do this event in a safe way. It's more or less the same thing, maybe even more restrict or more severe, if you will, protocol we're facing in Tokyo and Sapporo. So yes, we're confident that this is indeed possible and will take place.
The Diamond League events last year, there were several that were successful, and they had early on they had to kind of think their way through. How do you see the Diamond League being affected by the pandemic this coming summer?
So I think we found our way. There's a financial issue, of course, with organizers. Part of their revenue stream is just off because of spectators. Some of them will start to have spectators again. So to a certain extent, that will ease the burden on them. I think the main issue is probably how international travel will continue to be affected. That athletes, are they indeed? One thing is being willing to participate, and the organizers actually wanting athletes to take part in their event. Being able to actually get there may still at times be somewhat of an issue. But I think what we're seeing right now is we're solving this. Again, I think we see improvements on this nearly every day. So even for Silesia, yes, it wasn't all team. Some federations were not able to go to Silesia, but indeed we had teams traveling from all over the world to do this event. So I'm not going to say that problems are solved. They're not, but we're working our way through them. So I think we'll have a Diamond League season more like 2019 than 2020, albeit not identical to 2019, obviously.
As an American, I was unable to go to any of the meets last year, and I've got my one shot now, and we've been through the period. Will I continue to see challenges trying to travel to Diamond League events, just based on country for country's issues? Is that where we've got to stay kind of on top of?
I think this will be a case by case. This definitely comes down to national restrictions and temporary regulations. So even being right now in Europe, I need to pick my if I do a stopover, I need to think carefully of which airport I'm stopping over at, because there are differences even within European Union. So I expect we will see changes in that and improvements in that to get a, let's say, more or less globally aligned system where the passport and vaccinations should enable us to travel. But this is somewhat beyond our control.
Sure, sure. What as you go into the 2020 season, you've been through now the World Relays. What do you see the big challenges in this 2021 season?
Okay. Obviously, even making this work at a time where we still have to deal with significant issues, making this work operationally, financially, resource-wise, it's a significant challenge. So, for instance, for Cilicia, we work very closely with the LOC, figuring out how can we make ends meet. That took some effort, but we managed to do so, and I think we're going to keep doing that for quite some time. If we kind of then say on a more abstract level, end of 2019, I would argue that we as a sport, we were ready to make the next push, saying that this is not only about quality of performances, it's actually about making our events mean more. A lot of focus on growing the sport, a lot of focus on increasing the reach and relevance of our sport. For obvious reasons, this had to take the back seat for some time. To keep reminding ourselves that this is extremely important, even as we speak right now. That is going to be a major issue. So I'm sure you've noticed that the World Half Marathon Championship will be replaced by the World Road Running Championships. Yes. And part of that is not only to have a new world title in the 5K road running, it's also to change or evolve from a competition specific event towards something which is more like a celebration of an active lifestyle, running, festival of running, etc. Not only 2 days of competition, but indeed perhaps even a week long of activities related to running and related to our sports. Now, this is not something that you just do by flipping a switch or indeed snapping your fingers, right? It takes a lot of investment of creative design, working with local organizers, etc., and finding the time and let's just say mental focus to do that on our side as well as the local organizers whilst handling a pandemic. That is challenging, but it's something we need to keep reminding ourselves that there's a long game and there's a short game. Short game is obviously priority right now, but let's not forget the long game.
Let's talk about the long game and the short game for a little bit. I want our viewers to appreciate, which I've thought for some time. I sat down and tried to figure out budgets for you guys. And if in a general term, because I know there's privacy issues and things like that, if I made the bold statement that your costs have increased by about a third due to the pandemic for major events, is that being realistic, or is that being perhaps making it too big? The time I know has got to be just multiples of multiples, just trying to figure out. And then, like you just said before, which I didn't think about, so say you fly from, like what I used to love to do is I used to always like use the Copenhagen airport as one of my places to go in Europe because the beer was good and the little business office was fantastic. And then I would go from there to like Frankfurt, right? And then I would head to Italy. Well, what if going from Denmark to Germany right now, the protocols are different, right? So you get stuck somewhere. And so you were talking about that. That's something to think about. And that's happening in the US. I go from Wisconsin, where I live, to California, and they were on two different systems. We were eating outside in Wisconsin, and they were just starting to allow that in California, And so we can appreciate it a little bit in the U.S., but obviously with so many countries so close, everything's got to change. So that's juggling for you as well. But the cost of what you have to do, like in Silesia, what you have to do at a Diamond League meet, and without the cash flow of ticket sales, for example, that's got to affect meets. And that's what we've been trying to figure out in how they're going to do it in Tokyo, because the Japanese newspapers, they're all over. One said that the value from ticket sales, hotels, food, and things was about $23 billion with foreign fans. And I've been to, covered 10 Olympics, been to 8 now. And I know how expensive Tokyo is. And during an Olympics, stuff just continues to go up. So it's just got to be crazy. Is that the effect on other events too?
Well, honestly, and this is the honest truth. First of all, I have no insight in the budgets for Tokyo and the implications. I can imagine, obviously, but for our events, yes, if we had continued without changing anything in our approach, you may be right, but it's not really been reality, because we realized that the implications of just continuing standard operating procedures across all functional areas, and then adding the COVID-19 complexity on top of that, that's just not sustainable.
Sure.
So, and this has happened, I would say, efficiently and swiftly, and by necessity. The cost structure and all costs have basically been reviewed, figuring out what is nice to have and what is absolutely necessary. What do we need to change, or can we do more with less? So in that sense, there's no way you can describe COVID-19 as a blessing, but the outcome of what has happened here is actually us having a good reason to review how are we doing this. Now, this is for our events.
Sure.
And the business model in World Athletics events is different than it is for road race organizers or Diamond League organizers, et cetera. It's a significantly different business model, which means that in many ways, given our constituents, we have a lot of things to consider when planning an event. Less so in a Diamond League or a road race, meaning that they're actually rather fine-tuned already.
Okay.
And I would argue, yes, we have been as well. However, we have also been targeting a lot of different client groups, constituents, etc. So it was actually easier for us to identify possible cost savings, because all of a sudden what COVID-19 achieved was it was actually possible to have serious discussions, and maybe there's a different way. If you're organizing a meet or a race, you don't really need to consult with 214 constituents to do that, which is actually what we have to do.
No,
go ahead.
That brings up an interesting point. So for several years, World Athletics has been talking about lessening the carbon footprint, which I think is you guys have been doing a pretty good job. You keep us cognizant when we're at events of, recycling. And do we really need to use paper? We have these things called computers, and we're supposed to be a paperless society. So you've been dealing with some of those situations for a while. The challenge has been too, when people go to an event like a World Championships, they get hooked. how can you not? I mean,
Mm.
you could take the most stoic fan and put him in the stands in Doha for a day when Mutaz was doing the high jump and just go, oh yeah, this is cool. So we haven't had that ability to evangelize like that. We've had to use TV streaming, and I think you guys have done an amazing job with it. You've been capturing the quality of our events. You've got a good commentary crew that are educated and know their stuff. We have a little challenge with that in the U.S. because we have different ones sometimes, and I kind of lose my mind. But I love the people, and I love World Athletics Radio, which is I think it's one of the things that you guys need to work on more because it really captures the events and it uses our imagination. Are you going to, as the pandemic, changes, are you going to encourage people to come back to being fans, live fans at events? Are you going to also say, hey, look, we picked up some big numbers doing all this stuff remotely. How do we keep that? How do we bring people in? Because you've got, those are the challenges. I mean, they're good challenges, but those are the challenges I see ahead of you. How are you looking at that right now?
Well, we're still learning. I think that's key, right? There's no way that we would say, okay, live audience, that's a thing of the past. There's just no way. I think we can all appreciate watching a broadcast of any sport in an arena with no people present, and it's different. Let's just put it like that, right? So there's definitely an appetite to continue to build a live audience on site for sure for all our events. At the same time, we definitely want to and keep reminding ourselves to remember the lessons we're learning right now and to continue to work on that as well. So we kind of want to do both. We need to do both because this is about reach. I think that I mentioned this very early on in this conversation about reach and relevance. And this is basically about. Our events needs to be relevant for those in the stadium. It needs to be relevant for those watching it on broadcast. And at best, it needs to be relevant for those who are connected only by people who were there. So kind of like a ripple effect. And I realize this is extremely abstract, but what we're looking to do is basically use our events to create and provide value in, obviously, mostly in intangible value, but nevertheless. And part of that is definitely a live crowd in the stadium. Of course it is.
The World Running Championships that you're talking about, I'm pretty excited about that. I think it could be really cool. And I've heard just inklings of how many countries are interested. Why should a country like the U.S., why should a country like Germany or France sponsor the World Athletics Running Championships? What benefit do you see coming from them for doing that?
Okay, so there are, as you know this very well, that the number of events, global events, major sport events, has just grown. It's we're talking like thousands of events compared to where we used to have maybe like 20, 40, 50, hundreds. Now we're in the thousands. So why pick ours? Well, we're presenting this as, well, you should pick ours because, yes, it's a competition. We are seeing the best athletes in the world. We're bringing that to town.
Yeah.
But actually what we're doing is providing a platform. We're providing a platform on which we can work with the local organizers and the host city to create community programs, outreach programs targeting those who would not necessarily interact with sports, be that recreational sports or competitive sports. That's the direction we're moving towards, saying it's not about us coming to you. It's basically about us designing together a way to create value in your community on this. So instead of and I'm not belittling what we have done. It's not saying just competition, because it is the world's best, some of the world's best athletes. But basically, they provide a platform where the real action can happen, and not necessarily in the stadium. It could easily be in the streets. It could be in the schools, PE classes, you name it, targeting different social classes, low income families, etc. And we're not going to provide blueprints, but we are willing to engage with cities in how to do this, to leave behind something which actually leaves a lasting value.
When will we see a World Athletics Championships like we're going to see in Eugene next year have a component that's a World Road Running Championship as well? Or are you going to keep them as separate events?
We're going to keep them as separate events, but I understand where you're coming from on this. I think it's fair to say that the launch of the Road Running Championships is not going to, that's not the final destination. We will see, we will do more in this space. The growing the platform to build additional content, if you will, that's definitely on the radar. And this is not only about road running. Indeed, you should think this across all our platforms, right? So the World Cross Country next year in Bathurst, we're going to, in Australia, we will see the first inclusion. For the first time, we'll have World Masters Championships being part of that.
That's cool.
I realize that's a low-hanging fruit. It's obvious to do so, and it makes a lot of sense. So that is why we were able to do so, put this together in a very short time. But you should expect more of something like that for basically all our events to grow outside the traditional content.
What is when you did Copenhagen in 14? Let's go back there. I believe the crowd was estimated between 250 and 300,000. Does that make about sense? Okay. Will we see crowds like that at road races again? Do you think that there's going to be, do you think people are going to change their approach? Like in the U.S., the discussions are, even when they open up the baseball games and American football, there's still concerns about, does my neighbor have a vaccine? Are they wearing the masks and that kind of stuff? Do you see, how will that affect World Athletics? And how will that affect the events?
First of all, forever is a very, very long time. So do I think we will see that again? Yes.
Okay, good. Okay.
But it's probably not going to be next week, is it? So somewhere in between next week and forever, we're going to see it. But honestly, they're organizers, be that meet organizers or road race organizers. I have tremendous respect for this group of people because all of them, each in their own way, found a way to create a product that people were interested to engage with. So when the New York Road Runners Club, or indeed any other road race organizer, managed to put on a show which people just flock to, not to necessarily just to run, but actually to watch, they're going to figure this out again. And people are going to get somewhat more accustomed to how to deal with a new normal. And I expect that it may have taken us a bit more than a year now. We're a bit more than a year, but let's just say 18 months now of practice to figure out how to deal with the current situation. And I'm sure whenever we're back to a situation where where this virus is under control, people are just going to take some time getting accustomed to a new normal where social interaction and social contact may not be as troubling as it may appear to be right now. But honestly, at the end of the day, I have tremendous trust in our organizers. They are some of the most dedicated, driven, innovative people you'll ever meet. We'll find a way to make this work and make sense to just ordinary people. They'll be there.
All right. Yeah, you survived 35 minutes. We're down to the last 5, so good job. I want to take you back to Sapporo just for a minute. I know that David Katz, the gentleman who's worked on the New York course and who did what I think was the best Olympic trials course in the U.S. was in Central Park, was involved with Sapporo. So here's my question. Everybody wants fast times, but in a championship, I don't care about fast times. I want to see what these guys are up to. It's like a 26-mile chess game, right? So you want TV to be able to watch it, but you also want to showcase the area. And, you want to separate the pretenders from the real guys. You're going to throw in a hill or two. How do you juggle those kind of things? What are you looking for when you go to David and you say, because, I've been trying to get him to talk. He goes, I can't talk without World Athletics. And I'm going, okay, all right. Then I'll bother, Jakob. So what are the kind of things that you do when, you guys are walking Sapporo and you're going, God, this is a beautiful city. And we wanted to see this temple and these kind of things. Do you actually talk about the historic sites you want people to see on the course? Are those things involved?
So this is kind of like a recipe, right? You're in a kitchen.
Sure, yeah.
You're trying to cook up a marathon course.
Yeah.
But you don't really know what kind of ingredients you got until you kind of get the lay of the land. So designing a course, in my opinion, my experience, it always comes down to the hand you're dealt. So we got a city or whatever. We got a place to be. We need to be here. Okay. Where's the narrative? How can we design something here that is not just a race? Because if this was just a race, why not have the marathon in the stadium? That would be so much easier. Yeah. No, this is about something more. I mean, the marathon, and I'm passionate about this, marathon is the only event with a capital M. And it stands for so much more than just 42K, which means that there is a powerful narrative in there. And there's no a single right way to do this. You can have a very fast course because it makes sense in that location, and it presents to the athletes, to the spectators, whether that's on site or on screen, something that is compelling, not only because of the competition, but because of the total experience. Now, in Sapporo, that'll be one kind of course. If you're somewhere else, it will be something completely different, like Athens 2004. That was obviously a very, very different course because that made a lot of sense in Athens. So for me, course design is always, it has to be driven by narrative, and look at what kind of hand have we been dealt here.
Mm-hmm. Like when you did the course. Yeah, when you did the course in Copenhagen, what I loved about it was you were showing the sights of the city, but it was fast,
Yeah.
And people, and in the half, they want that,
Yeah.
It's a challenging race. Do you take, how long does it take to come up with a course idea? Is it a couple months? Is it something like does someone like David go in there? Does he have instructions? And then he kind of comes up and says, hey, these are the things that work. These are the things that are not going to work. This is TV's not going to be able to do anything here. We'd love to do this, but how does TV get involved here? I mean, does Peter Diamond from NBC or the gentleman from Nippon Television go, God, we love this, but how do we get cameras here? I mean, are those some of the things they're thinking about?
Yeah, of course. I mean, some courses, they just present themselves. It's like instantly, like the, obviously I wasn't around to be part of that team, but the Olympic marathon course in 2004 in Athens, that's kind of, you kind of had, okay, this is how it has to be. Now, at other times, you kind of need to look around and test, and you got these ingredients, right? But you also need it to fit, and so that may take some tailor making. And I've been working with David Katz for quite some time. And the way we would normally do it is just throw ideas on the table. And our relationship when we're designing a course, David and me specifically, what we're doing is basically throwing ideas out there and then testing them. Is this feasible? Can we actually pull this off without having too much, depending too much on chance? Nothing can be left to chance, right?
Yeah.
Once you're done and you have your kind of, this is where we want to go, this measures up, this is a course, we think we could make a spectacular event on this. Yes, the next step would be broadcast. Okay. And more often than not, broadcast will say, yes, we can do this. You just need to be aware of the cost. That there's the implication of that. And that's also obviously this features in as well. But when we did the World Cross Country Championships in Aarhus, that was a course that was somewhat special. We ran up a tilted roof in the museum. And maybe that's the best way to illustrate how that went, because that was kind of like, there's this roof. We need to do something with it. So that basically started with an idea. Let's do the roof, because that's something we can tell a story. We can build a story on this. And the rest was kind of like logistics. We kind of knew how long a lap needed to be, and we kind of knew where the start and finish area had to be because we need space. The rest of it is kind of like making ends meet, right? And you can extrapolate from that into a full marathon. Doing an inner city marathon, you kind of need to work around the buildings. Well, at least normally that would be the case.
That would change it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So it takes some tinkering, but yeah.
Well, I wanted to give you a chance to talk a little bit about that, because I think that, one of the things we're trying to do is give people appreciation. It's one thing to put on an event in a stadium. It's another one to put an event on the roads. And how do you put all those things together? So it's almost like managing a symphony in a lot of ways, because you've got the tuba players and you've got the violins and everything else. So I'm just going to think of you as a symphony conductor in the future. Okay. And
indeed, or indeed trying to, it's a guessing game, right? Because what we're trying to do is basically, we want to present a course where you and everyone else in the global athletics community, they go, this is something, we need to see this. This course is going to be spectacular for whatever reason, but whatever we do, let's not make it forgettable.
Well, that's what you did, I thought, in Aarhus, and that's what you did in Copenhagen. And Jakob, thank you so much for your time today. And I apologize for figuring out the time-space continuum yesterday. Mr. Deering, my production manager, chastised me a bit, and I did send a note to Lloyd because, your time is valuable. But Jakob, thank you so much. It was wonderful today. This is Socialing the Distance. This is Larry Eder on RunBlogRun. We've had Jakob Larsen, who's the Director of Competition and Events. Jakob, thank you so much. Hope to see you in Copenhagen or Monaco or somewhere on the road soon. Okay, but stay safe, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, hello, sports fans. Larry Eder, RunBlogRun, your favorite program, Socialing the Distance. And this week we featured Jakob Larsen. He's the Director of Competition and Events for World Athletics. I met Jakob when he was putting together with the LOC the Copenhagen World Half Marathon Championships back in the end of March 2014, which was awesome. And then he was involved with Aarhus, doing the cross country in 2019. Jakob's a lot of fun. He's got a great sense of humor. He loves what he does. It's really obvious. And at the end of the conversation, one of the things that I said is I look at him like a symphony conductor, where you've got your French horns and your violin and your tuba and all that other kind of stuff in there. And because there's so many moving parts with an event, it's one thing to manage an event that's inside a stadium, It's another thing to manage an event that has to showcase the historic and the iconic things in a city or a neighborhood. And then also keep the TV people happy, keep the competition people happy, be in places where fans can see things well, and also a place where where television can cover the event well too. Those are all some of the challenges. And then add on top of that the pandemic, and we know there's cost involved there, and it's not just financial costs. You know, in this day and age, we so much spend time about money, and everything has a money value. Well, the truth is, time's important too. And just think about all the extra time that World Athletics and that local meet directors and local race directors have had to put together to keep the sport viable. In 2019 or 2020, as we got into the pandemic, World Athletics put on over 600 events. It's not the normal, but it was pretty impressive. And the numbers of people who picked up COVID are pretty small. I think one of the biggest was the European indoor event with about 30 peeps. And that's pretty darn good. I mean, European athletics did that, World Athletics did not, but where they just did the World Relays in Silesia outdoors, the numbers were minuscule. And I just recall a report from CDC and the New York Times that the percentage of people catching COVID outdoors, well, I think CDC talked a bit about 10% because they wanted to give a number that was that could not be argued with. And the issue was they were a little too high. It's under one, it's just over 0.1 of 1% in terms of the number of people who become infected with COVID outdoors. It just tells you how hard it is to spread this thing if you're outdoors. You still need to be careful, you still need to be safe. And we encourage everybody putting on track meets to and road races to stay safe, stay smart, stay committed. If they do those things, we're going to be able to keep the sport growing and going in the good way and getting more and more events going on. So I think that's what it's all about. Jakob obviously is cognizant of that and working with World Athletics. He just got back from Japan and he saw the courses in Sapporo for the 50K, the 20K, and the marathon. At least I think there's a 50K this time. I know it will, I'll just say the longest race ball because that is in a constant state of flux. But the marathon course, which is designed by David Katz, guy behind the 2008 Olympic trials in Central Park back then. David has put together some of the finest courses in the world, and he was involved with this one too. I just couldn't get him to talk. So I asked Jakob a little bit about it. He told me, you know, the kind of the process they go through, which is great. It was something to learn about. But Jakob's a lot of fun. Again, he's one of those people behind the scenes, one of the really great people behind the scenes who influence our sport and give us more to see and give us more to enjoy and experience. And that's why you needed to know who Jakob Larsen was, just besides being a really good guy from Copenhagen. Okay, so this is Larry Eder with RunBlogRun. It's Socialing the Distance is the program. If you like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and like us on all three, please. Your eyeballs mean we get a little more paid, you know, and I can stop feeding people peanut butter and banana sandwiches. We can do something else that's healthy as well. If you love us, subscribe on our YouTube channel. We have over 2,500 audios and videos that have been around since 2010. Mike Deering from the Shoe Addicts is our production manager, and Mike did 369 videos last year for us. Pretty amazing, just pretty amazing. And want to thank Mike for all his hard work. And now he gets to do the hard stuff about trying to produce this puppy too. So stay safe. If you're outside and you've been vaccinated, just keep your mask in your pocket. If you get too close to people and you just don't know, it's a big group, wear the mask. You don't want to be a carrier. If you're indoors, even with a shot, I would still say wear a mask. Just be careful, okay? Take care. Have a good day.